Now that you've seen what's in the curriculum, we want to ask, who writes this curriculum anyway? Where is it coming from? And I think it's an important question. First thing we want to do is we're going to jump into the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade Flash curriculum. And you'll see here, there's a couple names that are featured on this document. It's Elizabeth Beth Reese and then Brett Neeson are two names that collaborated together on the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade Flash curriculum. And Beth Reese, kind of the bios of who these folks are, probably really decent, nice, kind people, probably great neighbors. I don't know them personally, but their backgrounds give you an indication of kind of who they are and where they're coming from. Beth Reese, in addition, she is currently a gender studies professor at the University of Oregon, but when she lived in Washington State, she and her partner were the lead plaintiffs in a lawsuit against Washington State's Defense of Marriage law. Now, back in the 90s, Washington State did pass a law clarifying that marriage was a relationship between a man and a woman. And Beth Reese was enough involved in kind of the LGBT political activist scene that she and her partner were the lead plaintiffs in a case that went to the Washington State Supreme Court on that issue. Now, ultimately, in 2005, the Washington State Supreme Court clarified that it was legal to have a law maintaining marriage as a relationship between a man and a woman, which of course is true. But this is an indication into the perspective and the worldview of the person writing the curriculum, at least one of them. Now, the other person mentioned on the curriculum pages is a gentleman named Brett Neeson. Now, a little internet research helps us to see that he is enough of an LGBT activist to be painting his rainbow flag on his Facebook profile and a picture of his same-sex partner. Now, also publicly available through Facebook, we're going to see, I'm going to give you some excerpts of a New Year's greeting that he did, and this is just something that he'd posted on the internet, so we were able to grab. I think is a window into how this gentleman thinks about the world. And it says, "Happy New Year's, everyone. I wish you all more laughter, more economic equality, less racism, more Democratic candidates in office, more steps towards universal health care, more acceptance of refugees, less military intervention, fewer guns and gun deaths, less inane attacks on Planned Parenthood and women's rights, more heroes in movies who are people of color and women and transgender and gay, less white privilege, more dialogue, less acceptance that it's okay for anyone to die for the color of their skin, in war or by terrorism, domestic or abroad. Less shame about sex, more sex if you want it, less hating on people for just being who they are, or for having or performing a completely legal medical procedure called abortion. Less environmental pollution, fewer fossil fuels used, more garbage recycled or composted, less plastic in our oceans, and more appreciation that life is short and beautiful and amazing, and all of its moments are to be relished with exuberance." Now, this statement is not especially remarkable, especially in a place like Seattle. It's a fairly middle-of-the-road restatement of how progressives view the world and what's important to them. So it's not remarkable in the sense that he's the only person who feels that way, but it's just a window into how he views the world, and he and the lead plaintiff against Washington's law, Defense of Marriage Act, are the two people who were in this case charged with writing the curriculum that would shape how 4th, 5th, and 6th graders all over the state think about gender, sexuality, marriage, relationships, their bodies, all of those things. Now, it doesn't just start with the high school, it doesn't stop with the grade school curriculum. In the high school curriculum, we'll also see there are, of the two of the five authors that we were able to find are in openly same-sex relationships, and we don't know as much about the others, but it's likely that Andrea Gerber, Mo Lewis, and Rebecca Milliman are probably not apprentices of James Dobson's. That seems to be likely. But why does this matter? Are these bad people? Don't know any of them? Very well may not be. But parents need to understand this. They're certainly overrepresented. If the gay community is 3% of the population, the fact that 4 of the 7 that we know of who are writing the sex ed curriculum are in same-sex relationships is certainly disproportionate to their influence in the population. What I think we can, if I were to get below the surface and kind of guess why, I think the reason why they get involved in things like writing curriculum is because of the assumption that my guess is that there's a lot of pain there, is that the people who are writing this curriculum have come from a place where they have probably been legitimately mistreated, but they have a perspective that the reason that I experienced pain as a child is because of all these mean people who judge and who are intolerant. And as soon as we get rid of those ideas, as soon as we get rid of the idea that some behavior is not acceptable, as soon as we get rid of gender stereotypes as I understand them, as soon as we get rid of judgmentalism, then the next generation of children are not going to experience the pain that I experience. And if the assumptions that they make about the world are actually true, it kind of makes sense. The problem is they're not true, and the things that we're incentivizing and encouraging kids to do are creating all sorts of carnage and pain for them. But their assumption is, as soon as we get rid of intolerance and judgmentalism, then students and children will be happy. So we're going to write a curriculum that's going to make sure that students learn, above all, the worst thing you can do is judge anything, and that's how we're going to create a peaceful, utopian world for children. Now, it's a very, very different perspective, and I think we need to understand their motive is likely very good and comes from a place of we want to help children avoid pain that we may have experienced as children ourselves. But I think it's important for us to understand who it is that's writing this curriculum, because we know then who's catechizing our children. How do they view the world, and do we really want them instructing our kids on how to view the world and how to think about these important, critical issues? And at least for me, the answer is no. But what we want to remind you as parents and as grandparents and as community members is ultimately your children still belong to you. Children still belong to their parents. And there is really, really strong case law on this. And I just want to throw up one quote from a fairly landmark case in the parental rights world of Troxel versus Glanville in the homeschooling context. The courts have consistently upheld the idea that parents are the guardians of their children, that government does not own children, that parents have a right to direct their upbringing and, in fact, have a duty to do so. And we want parents to exercise that. The challenge, and we've heard this from many parents in many different school districts, is once we get up the gumption to say, you know what, I want to find out what my students are learning, what teachers are giving to my children. I want to see this curriculum. It ends up being difficult because there are layers of bureaucracy within school districts that are kind of discouraging parents from doing that. And there's a humorous little anecdote from a Doug Adams book that I think illustrates the challenge that many parents are facing. And it's a conversation between two people, or one of the characters says, but the plans were on display. On display? I had to go down to the cellar to find them. Well, that's the display department with a flashlight. Ah, well, the lights had probably gone out. Well, so had the stairs. But look, you found the notice, didn't you? Yes, said Arthur. Yes, I did. It was on display in the bottom of a locked filing cabinet, stuck in a disused lavatory, with a sign on the door saying, "Beware of the leopard." Now, that is the experience that a lot of people have when we deal with government bureaucracies, not just school boards and school districts, but many different layers of government bureaucracy. But my encouragement to you is hopefully in understanding what the content is, the motivation, and who it is that's writing this stuff. This is really important. And one of the best ways that we can intervene and help in this is run for school board. Put ourselves in a position where we can know what is being presented to kids before it gets there. And if we realize it's objectionable, if it's not going to be healthy, if it's going to be destroying their innocence rather than equipping them to make good adult mature decisions, then we can get rid of that because we put ourselves in a position to do so. But what should be obvious by now is that if we don't volunteer, if we don't put ourselves in those positions, there are other people who are happy to do so. And if we let them, then the implications of that can be very significant in a bad way for our kids.